Vladimir Putin is hiding, not metaphorically, literally. Russia's most powerful man has not been seen at his Moscow residence, has not toured a single military facility, and according to a classified EU intelligence report, has been rotating between fortified bunkers in the Krasnodar region since March 2026. And the reason he is hiding will shock you, because the threat is not coming from Ukraine. It is coming from inside his own palace. If you want to understand where Russia is actually heading right now, stay with us, because what we are about to reveal goes far deeper than what mainstream media is covering. Drop a comment below telling us what you think. Is Putin's grip on power finally breaking? The chain of events that pushed Putin into hiding began on December 22, 2025. Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov was assassinated in the heart of Moscow. It was not the first targeted killing of a Russian military officer, but it was the most alarming because this time the strike landed in Russia's own capital. Chief of the General Staff Gerasimov immediately called for an emergency Security Council meeting. It was scheduled for December 25th, and on that exact same day, a second strike hit the exact same location where Sarvarov had been killed 3 days earlier. Ukraine was not just sending bullets, it was sending a message. The meeting that followed did not produce unity, it produced chaos. Gerasimov accused the intelligence services of failing to detect the attacks. FSB Director Bortnikov fired back, arguing it was impossible to prevent every strike and criticizing the Defense Ministry for lacking a dedicated protection unit. Rosgvardia Director Zolotov refused to redirect his resources entirely, offering only vague operational advice, which infuriated Gerasimov further. 3 of Russia's most powerful security chiefs sat at the same table and spent the entire meeting pointing fingers at each other. That single scene tells you everything about the fracture lines running through the Kremlin right now. And it gets worse. If you are finding this analysis valuable, share this video with someone who follows geopolitics. They need to see this. Following the meeting, Putin quietly made a decision that reveals just how deep his fear runs. He expanded the list of officials receiving round-the-clock FSO protection, Russia's Federal Protective Service. Previously, only Gerasimov was on that list. After December, 10 additional high-ranking commanders were added, including the GRU director, deputy chiefs of the General Staff, and the head of the National Defense Control Center. Russia's top military minds now cannot safely operate in their own capital without personal security details. But the surveillance doesn't stop at commanders. Staff working in close proximity to Putin are banned from using smartphones with internet access. They cannot take public transport. Every vehicle must be an approved FSO car. Surveillance cameras have been installed inside the private homes of cooks, photographers, and close protection officers. Every single visitor to the presidential administration now passes through a 2-stage security screening. And here is something that was independently verified through journalist sources. Communication networks in parts of Moscow are being periodically shut down, not by the FSB, but by the FSO itself. Russia's most powerful intelligence infrastructure is no longer pointed outward at enemies. It is pointed inward at its own government. And buried inside that intelligence report is a name that changes everything. A name that may explain why Putin is more afraid of his own circle than of any foreign adversary. Stay with us, because this is where the story takes a turn that no one in the Kremlin wanted made public. That name is Sergei Shoigu. For years, Shoigu was the face of Russian military power, photographed beside Putin on fishing trips, seated at state dinners, present at every major ceremony. He was not just a minister, he was a symbol of regime loyalty. But the war in Ukraine eroded that relationship beyond repair. Military failures mounted, corruption scandals surfaced, and in June 2023, Yevgeny Prigozhin marched Wagner forces toward Moscow. And his primary stated target was not Putin, it was Shoigu. The rebellion was crushed. Prigozhin died in a plane crash 2 months later. But the incident left a permanent scar on the Kremlin's sense of safety because it proved something terrifying, that a figure with enough military influence could mobilize armed men against the system. In May 2024, Putin moved Shoigu out of the Defense Ministry and into the Security Council, presented publicly as a promotion, understood internally as a demotion. Then, in March 2026, Shoigu's former first deputy, Ruslan Salakov, was arrested on corruption charges. Before him, almost every other deputy who had served under Shoigu had already been placed under investigation. This is not a coincidence. This is a systematic dismantling. A slow encirclement designed to cut off Shoigu's remaining influence without publicly accusing him of anything. For Russia's elite, this sent a chilling signal. The unwritten rule that inner circle figures were untouchable has been permanently canceled, and when that rule disappears, the loyalty calculations of every person around Putin begin to shift. Now ask yourself this: if Putin is eliminating the people closest to him out of fear, how long before that fear turns into the very thing he is most afraid of? It was in this atmosphere of barely contained paranoia that the night of May 4th arrived. A UAV detonated on Moskovskaya Street in Moscow, a building struck just 6 kilometers from the Kremlin walls. Moscow Mayor Sobyanin confirmed the incident. Independently verified footage showed the drone flying over Gryazno in the city's southern suburbs, meaning Moscow's airspace had been successfully penetrated. The physical damage was limited. The psychological impact was not. Because Putin's deepest fear, the one documented in the intelligence report, is not that Ukraine launches a drone at Moscow. It is that someone inside Russia decides to do the same thing. Ukrainian President Zelensky stoked that fear directly, speaking from Yerevan just days later. He noted that for the first time in years, Russia's Victory Day parade on May 9th would have no heavy military vehicles on Red Square. Zelensky's message was deliberate. Ukrainian drones could reach that parade, and the Kremlin knew it. For the first time in 19 years, tanks and missile systems were absent from Red Square. Access to the square was restricted. Snipers were repositioned. Machine gunners were placed on the Kremlin towers, and in an unprecedented move, not a single member of the State Duma was invited to attend. The parade that Putin had used for 2 decades as his most potent symbol of imperial strength was stripped down to a security exercise. That is not a precaution. That is an admission. The cracks are not confined to the military. Russia's civilian elite is beginning to move. In late April, Denis Buiv, former Deputy Minister of Natural Resources and former Director General of a Kremlin-linked state company overseeing national waste management reform, fled Russia immediately after being removed from his post. His route was carefully planned: Minsk first, then Tbilisi, then the United States. Buiv was not on any Western sanctions list, which likely made his escape easier to execute. He is the highest-ranking official known to have fled Russia since 2024. His departure is not just a data point, it is a warning sign. Putin's post-2024 purge campaign, sweeping arrests, dismissals, and investigations across both the military and civilian elite, has shattered the Kremlin's implicit social contract. The message insiders used to operate on was simple: stay loyal, stay quiet, stay protected. That message no longer holds. Buiv's escape has triggered serious concern inside the Kremlin that others facing investigation may calculate the same exit, and Soviet history gives that concern real weight. During Stalin's 1937 purges, senior officials fled west when they concluded tomorrow it would be their turn. During the chaos of Operation Barbarossa, defections spiked as regime confidence collapsed. When the Soviet Union itself began to disintegrate, hundreds of bureaucrats sought asylum abroad. Putin's strategists know this pattern. They are watching it replay in slow motion, and they cannot stop it. The pressure building outside the Kremlin walls is equally significant. The FSO directed internet outages across parts of Moscow, verified independently, are disrupting ordinary life. Banking apps fail, ride-sharing services go dark. Business communications are severed. Russians are noticing, and they are angry. Social media dissatisfaction, measured through VPN-accessed platforms that bypass state censorship, has reached levels not seen in years. Even in state-controlled polling, Putin's approval rating has slid from 77% into the mid-60s. Independent analysts believe the real number is lower. The human cost of the war is becoming impossible to contain within the information blackout. Western estimates place Russian casualties at nearly 30,000 per month. Funeral announcements from impoverished ethnic republics are rising steadily. Meanwhile, Moscow's wealthiest neighborhoods remain insulated from that grief. That gap between the families burying sons in Dagestan and Buryatia and the untouched life of Moscow's elite is producing a quiet, slow-burning anger that state media cannot neutralize. And on top of all of it, Putin himself is showing signs that the system's most essential variable, his own health, may be less stable than the Kremlin admits. In March 2026, a video was briefly uploaded to the Kremlin's official channel before being deleted. It showed Putin coughing severely, visibly short of breath. The original footage had already spread widely before removal. Observable swelling in his hands has fueled persistent speculation about Parkinson's disease. The Kremlin insists his health is excellent and has quietly allocated $26 billion to an anti-aging gene therapy initiative. Draw your own conclusions. Because if Putin's health deteriorates suddenly, every calculation in this analysis accelerates simultaneously: the succession vacuum, the coup risk, the elite defections, the public anger, all of it compressed into a single moment that no one inside the Kremlin has a plan for. Russia's international partners are already adjusting their positioning in anticipation of exactly that scenario. China is maintaining economic investment, locking in energy assets and raw material agreements, while quietly loosening political ties. Beijing's calculation is straightforward: a stable Russia supplying cheap energy and serving as a strategic counterweight to the West is valuable. An unstable Russia mid-succession crisis is a liability. The playbook is more money, less commitment. Iran is growing anxious. Its military relationship with Russia, Shahed drones exchanged for air defense systems, and a nuclear deterrence umbrella, is built entirely on the assumption that Moscow is a reliable partner. Putin's disappearances and the Kremlin's internal purges are making Tehran question whether that assumption still holds. North Korea is pressing forward regardless, expecting technology transfers in exchange for the thousands of soldiers it has deployed to Ukraine. But Kremlin instability threatens those transfers too. India is maintaining its pragmatic distance, continuing to purchase discounted Russian oil while making no deeper commitments. New Delhi has no interest in tethering its foreign policy to a partner whose internal stability is increasingly uncertain. The question every one of these governments is asking, in private, is identical: what happens to Russia the day after Putin? There is no agreed answer. And that absence of an answer is itself eroding Russia's international leverage every single day. The full picture, assembled from intelligence reporting, verified ground-level observations, and the historical patterns of authoritarian collapse, points to a system exhibiting classic pre-implosion stress fractures. A ruler who fears his inner circle more than his foreign enemies. Intelligence services redirected inward to monitor the government itself. Elite defections signaling the collapse of the loyalty compact, security agencies paralyzed by internal blame rather than external threats, a public absorbing economic pain and war grief in silence, and the regime's most powerful propaganda symbol, the Victory Day parade, visibly diminished under the weight of its own security fears. Putin remains in power. He retains control of the security services. A coup is not imminent. But as investigative publisher Roman Anin observed, we are watching the Russian regime transform into something fundamentally different from what it was. And history is consistent on what that transformation tends to produce. Authoritarian systems do not usually collapse from outside pressure. They collapse when the people inside them stop believing the system can protect them. That moment has not arrived. But the people closest to Putin are beginning to ask themselves a question they never asked before. And the fact that they are asking it is the most dangerous development of all. So what do you think? Is this the beginning of the end for Putin's regime, or will the Kremlin hold together? Drop your prediction in the comments right now. We analyze these developments daily, so if you want to stay ahead of the story, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next update may change everything. Share this with one person who follows geopolitics. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. We break down stories like this every single day, and you do not want to miss what comes next.